I'm a member of the silent generation. And you may not realize it, but there are 7 generations that have been categorized. And my generation is the silent generation. And I was born at the end of the silent generation. I'm sure you've heard of baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Z, the millennials, and all of that. That's what I'm talking about when I say the various generations. My generation was the silent generation. I am 81 years old, so that gives you a little feel for the silent generation. In other words, we were the generation that was resilient, hardworking, strong values, a lot of interpersonal relationships, loyal and traditional. So that some of the things and my way of thinking may be a little different from the way you think, because we are just simply from different generations. I grew up under segregation in Washington, D.C. And I would say that my upbringing was a traditional one with a mother and a father in the home. And later on, we went to live with my grandfather. So there was a mother and father and grandfather and aunts and uncles always in and out. I didn't realize that I lived under segregation because people didn't talk about it. And I think you will find out that anywhere in the country where there was segregation, people didn't talk about it because they were just raised that way. You never paid any attention to it. And unless somebody points it out to you, it's just everyday living. We had no idea as little children that there was anything wrong with segregation. And now that I think about it, there was nothing wrong with segregation in my head. I went to an elementary school that was just fabulous in terms of the teachers and what they taught us. Because in a segregated school, we learned all about our history. Every day, the teacher took time out to talk with us about etiquette. We talked about our history. Every day, she gave little nuggets. And they weren't afraid to discipline us because they knew it was for our good. They would keep us in after school, but we didn't think anything about it. That was just the way it was. And they would make us do our work over and over. And if you talked and you weren't supposed to talk, you stayed in school. And every morning we would go to school and the teacher would have the opening of school. We would say the Lord's Prayer. We would have a Bible scripture. We would sing a song. Then we would do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And we would sing one of the songs about the flag. And we enjoyed doing that. We did that every day. And then we had current events so that we would be aware of what was going on in the news that day. We enjoyed our school experience. Then we sat down at our tables and had our lesson for today. Then at 10:30, we went outside and played. Came back in, had milk and cookies. We put our heads on the desk and took a little brief nap. It wasn't really a nap, but it was a quiet time for about 15 minutes. I guess the teacher had to get herself together. And so she had us to put our heads down. Some children fell off to sleep because we played outside so hard. Then at noon, we went to lunch. We brought our lunch in those days in lunch bags. They didn't have free lunch and things like they do now. We had to bring our lunch. And some of us had peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. We may have had some cookies. Some of us may have just had a piece of bread. But we came to school and nobody knew, but we would just have our lunch, have our studies in the afternoon. We would take another little brief nap, get up, do some more work, and then the day was over. That was under segregation. And the same with junior high school. There was a segregated junior high school that I went to. Now, when I got into high school, that's when integration came. I tell you, it was something for some of us who had not been around white people before. But you know what? In my high school, they didn't bother us and we didn't bother them. We went to school together. We spoke. We were in the same class. Now, there wasn't a lot of intermingling. And I can't say that we were staying in our place, but we just didn't care. We just wanted to be with our own. They were with their own. We still didn't understand that concept of integration and all of that. It was just going to school for us. And later on, I remember when Emmett Till got killed. That was something that changed my life forever. And I think it changed the trajectory of how African Americans moved and thought and had their being. Because it was the first time that we had even talked about differences, black and white issues. It was the first time we had talked about racism. And you see, our parents knew about the lynchings and the fact that some of our people had to leave the South and rush up to the North. But we just didn't know anything about that. It wasn't until for me that my mother and aunt wanted to take us to a park called Glen Echo Park. And when we walked up to the park, the lady said, "I'm sorry, you can't come in here." And my mother said, "Why not? I have the money to pay, and we just have a small group here." She said, "I'm sorry, coloreds can't come in here." That was the first time I understood what racism was, but I was too young to really get its full impact. Now that I look back on the situation and what we had in that segregated school system, because when integration came, it tore down the black schools altogether. Some of those principals lost their jobs. Some of those teachers lost their jobs. It was just like they never existed. I tell you, that was a time. That was a time. But there's so many good things to think about when you think about the separation. But we need to have our just deserve. We fought for the right to have that integrated life if that's what we want. Now, some still want to be separate, and that's their right if that's what they want. But some want to be integrated. They want to live wherever they want to live. They want to go to the schools wherever they want to go to the schools. They want to have jobs wherever they are qualified for those jobs. And I think that is in the realm of possibility and, in my opinion, a right.